Alrighty. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate you guys listening. We're on episode number 16.
Oh my God, 16. It's gone so fast.
I know, we're going to be nearly in the 20s, which is fucking crazy.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
In the 20s. I remember when we hit episode 5.
Yeah, I know.
Was
what
like,
an achievement.
What an achievement. Or episode 10. And it was like, what? Episode 10, double digits.
No, we're doing so well. And there's no fucking way I'm running out of stories. The list I've got on my Google Docs is just crazy.
I sometimes have a very hard time choosing my story. I actually, because Steph and I, we usually record on a Saturday. If Saturday doesn't work out, we'll record on a Monday. And usually, so sometimes I get to Thursday and I still haven't decided on what to do because I'm there's just so many good stories.
I always have 3 in my mind and I'm okay, I've got to narrow it down by Friday because Friday's when I start writing it. So, because I do work during the week and then I should be good to do it on the Tuesday when I've got Tuesday off, but I'm not that. I thrive in chaos and deadlines and I'm we're doing it tomorrow. But then I'll be can we record on Monday? Because I haven't done
I'm
anything.
exactly the same.
Yeah.
My life is also chaos. My child is chaos.
Yeah.
I am chaotic. Everything. Because I pretty much can't write any of my stories during the day because I am a stay-at-home mum. So in my head, before I gave birth to my daughter, I was I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mom and work from home and look after her at the same time. And it's there's no way that that's happening. So I never get to write my story when I'm looking after her in the daytime.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't even imagine trying to get even just observing children, not having them. I'm how would you get anything done? So
You can't get anything done. Today I literally was sitting on the toilet with Panda on my lap.
Yeah.
And she was crying and pulling at my hair and I'm just Mum's doing a pee.
Yeah.
Give me calm down for a second.
Give mommy a second. Come on.
The dog's watching me from the doorway and
oh God. Well, I'm sure that we've got a lot of relatable listeners.
Yes. If not, we just lost 10 listeners.
What is your story? Because I don't even know what yours is.
You do not know. And I don't know what yours is either. So my story this week is a ghosty story.
Yep.
But it's also very sad.
Oh.
It's a very sad story. And it's very interesting.
Okay.
But I've been wanting to do this one for a while. I'm really glad that I'm finally doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's quite sad, but it's, very interesting. What are you doing? What's your story this week?
If you know UFO stuff, I'd say this is a classic kind of UFO incident that happened.
Okay.
It's really quite hard to find anything about this. There's only kind of one form of documentation you can get from this, about this, which is from a book that was written from the person that experienced this. There's no real articles written on it or anything. It's very strange. I think they're kind of keeping it quite hush-hush. But
right.
I love this story. It's just a crazy UFO story. It's wild. And it's pretty much going to be a story really, I don't want to summarize too much, but I'm picking out points which I think are really interesting. And of course, if you want to know more, you should definitely read the book. But fuck, it's good.
I love because you're such a UFO aficionado. So you always have the creme de la creme of UFO.
This is wild. Yes, this is jaw dropping. What the fuck are you? What?
Yay!
Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. I think our stories are going to be quite contrasting this week.
Okay,
because
good.
mine is. I guess it's a little bit jaw-dropping in some aspects, but it's quite different to UFOs and aliens in the sky and everything.
It is very much like that, this one. So
yay!
It's good to have the contrast.
Exciting. So I want to ask you something that is not related to the paranormal at all, but it's something that I've been following for like a few weeks now.
Oh.
And there's been like a new revelation happening in this thing. Have you been following the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case?
Not too much. My boyfriend has, and I've been hearing things mostly through him about it, but I'm not really sure too much.
It's very interesting. So basically, this is like true crime.
Right.
This is not paranormal, but I've been like intensely like waiting for details on this case because I do follow a lot of like true crime stuff. So and like a lot of my podcasts that I listen to are true crime and everything. But
went deep in true crime. So I completely understand. Yeah.
It's oh my God, this case is like so crazy. So basically, like Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito were a couple and they were engaged and they were traveling in their van around America like only just a few months ago, maybe like 5 months ago. And then so basically it was caught on like police camera that they were like having arguments and police were involved with like domestic disputes and shit. And not long after the police were involved with like a domestic dispute involving like Gabby and Brian, Gabby went missing.
Yeah, right.
And it was like highly suspected that Brian, her fiance, her boyfriend, was involved.
Okay.
And he basically like returned home and like totally refused to help the police at all.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. That was fucking weird. It's like, oh, that's not sus. Like,
it's so sus. Like, he refused to help them at all. His family refused to help them, and it's all really crazy. And then he disappears. So he goes missing and his family has been saying like no idea where he is. They're not basically giving any information at all. And then eventually the cops were like, we're searching your house.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe they like found some information in the house, or maybe like Brian's family eventually gave the police more information. But anyway, they eventually found Gabby's body.
Right, yeah.
Like after Brian had disappeared and she had been murdered. And so now Brian is like super suspect, still missing. But it's just been in the past like week or so. So sorry, I'm just kind of skipping ahead.
No, that's okay.
I'm jumping in my timeline. So basically like maybe 3 weeks ago, they actually found Brian's body as well after he'd been missing for like weeks.
That's right. He was
returning
missing.
back home and stuff. And it's just come out that they've released the manner of death, which is like a shot to the head. So basically, they think that he took his life.
Okay. Yeah.
After disappearing, not giving the cops any like information, and after so Gabby had also found like her autopsy found that she had been strangled.
Oh my God.
As well.
Oh,
so
fuck weird.
It's like this really, really crazy thing because like I guess like they were quite present on like social media and like Instagram and they were kind of like in like air quotes,
very
influencers,
like available on the internet, so everyone kind of could see their lives and stuff. Is that all up there still?
Yes.
I mean, I guess so, because after it all happened, they wouldn't have had.
No, they haven't taken it down, and like the last few posts of Gabby's is like photos of her traveling with Brian.
Wow.
And it's just been this really publicized thing where
that's horrible.
I know, and you're just like waiting for little bits of information to come out, and it's like, oh my God, Brian's disappeared, and then there's like been hints given from certain people saying like he's in this area, and then everyone's like, "Oh, we've got to be
after
dead."
They found him. Like, is it just kind of like? I guess there's not much more to really go off, but
I don't know. Do they like?
That's crazy.
Do they still kind of just? Yeah. Do they drop it or do they pursue it? I guess they would pursue it further.
I'm sure
but
there's some like conspiracy theory that they didn't actually find Brian and he's still out there.
Well, you know what? There is like this group of, let's just call them
detectives?
No.
Oh.
No. Let's call them men's rights activists.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Who are saying that Brian strangled Gabby as like self-defense because
She's
they're
so
like
tiny. How?
she
Okay.
was tiny. She was like a stick, and he's like this
Yeah, that's
fucking
so
like
ridiculous.
gym bro. You know, they're like she was abusive to him, so it was like
Okay.
self-defense, and so he strangled her to defend himself, and they're like they think that he's like some kind of fucking like
Hero.
king
Fucking
of
hell.
men, like and there's like this huge group of like these people who really just like back him and think that, you know, it was all deserved.
God, that's so crazy.
I know.
Jesus. Yeah, I didn't look too much into it. I don't know why, but yeah, that is absolutely wild. I remember hearing when he was just in the house and like refusing to talk to anyone. I was like, just fucking go in his house. Like, just go. Like, what do you mean? It's so
know.
obvious.
Well,
they would have had to have some reason
I
to
know.
go in.
I know, and for ages he wasn't even like a suspect. He was technically like a person of interest. So they couldn't, like, even though he was traveling with her and there was like this domestic, and like it's all really sus because one of the cops that kind of dealt with the like domestic dispute that they were called to when they were traveling together, he didn't deal with the whole situation very well, and it's like, well, if he had dealt with that better, Gabby wouldn't have kind of been left in this situation that was, you know, potentially, well, it was life threatening because like Brian killed her. You know, if
Oh my God.
the cop had like done his duty properly, then it would have ended better than how it did. And then there's like Brian's parents. A lot of people think that they're involved somehow in like Gabby's murder. And so there's a lot of like
they're going to disappear
talk.
soon too then, by the sounds of it.
So it's all very interesting. I know it's not paranormal related, but
I mean,
I've been following it so carefully. I'm just like, I'm going to ask Steph if she's been following it as well. Oh, it's such a crazy story. And it's like just, oh my God, I've been watching like so many videos. Just
really? All right.
trying to get any details.
Jesus. Well, we also wanted to talk about Patreon. Oh my God, why did I say it like that? Patreon. Jesus.
Patreon.
Patreon. We are on Patreon if you guys were interested. We do have if you do become a patron, we actually do have a private Discord server, which I mean, me and Jordy are on Discord every day, so it only makes sense for us to have Discord. So if you haven't used Discord before, it's awesome. It's just like pretty much a chat room, a live chat room, and we've got different like rooms of where you could talk about stuff, about episodes or ghosts or Bigfoot or whatever you want, anything really. So that's something we've got there.
Yeah, we have like 2 basic tiers, which is what we're kind of just like keeping it at, you know, for a while until we get a, you know, better understanding of how all this stuff works.
Yeah.
But so the bottom, well, the first tier is kind of a general support type tier. But there's like perks on both 1 and 2, both the tiers, and that'd be awesome if you want to support us that way.
Yeah, so that's up and running. And we also, in a couple weeks, which is crazy, we're going to have Christmas coming up. So we will be doing probably a Christmas-themed episode.
I can't wait. I'm so excited for a Christmas themed. I love Christmas.
Yeah.
I'm like such a
Christmas
Christmas hoe.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It is just like the most exciting time of the year. I used to be like that Grinch that was like, oh, I fucking hate Christmas.
Yeah.
But I have...
The older I've gotten, the more I've loved it. I think...
Yeah.
I don't know, everyone's kind of... I completely understand. Like, everyone's got very different relationships with Christmas.
Yeah.
Because obviously a lot of people aren't close to their family. Like, for me, I've only got... The only family I really have is my mum and my 2 sisters. And then my best friend, their family, and, like, our close friends. That's kind of all we've ever had. But, so it's never really been a big thing. But we've always just cooked shitloads of food, Just
Yeah,
eat
good food.
until we're in coma, and then just
Yep.
watch absolute trash TV and just sing Christmas
Yeah.
carols. Like, that is literally, and it's just great.
Oh my God. And it's always just like so hot. Like,
Oh, it's
the weather is
so
hot.
hot.
You eat all the food and then you just
Yeah.
go into like a food coma on the lounge.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, everyone
in front
has
of
like
the air conditioning.
afternoon nap, and then you eat the leftovers
The
again for
leftovers,
dinner,
yeah.
and then probably for breakfast.
Does your family eat prawns?
Oh yeah,
Ah, nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
eat like kilos of prawns.
we're already discussing. My sister Bella has already made a group chat of what we're eating for Christmas this year, and
Yep.
we're already trying to. So we're like, okay, let's go, because usually, I mean, literally, there's like four or five people at Christmas, and we're like, okay, we need ham, we need the prawns. Mum's always like, I'm making the Nigella Lawson chicken. It's the best chicken you can get. It's the Nigella Lawson recipe. So
Nigella.
she loves it. So, and it is very good chicken. So she
Yes.
makes like a roast chicken. Because like a turkey, like, are you fucking serious? We'll never finish it if there's that many. There's like 4 people.
I don't think I don't think anyone in my family has ever roasted a turkey
it's just
ever.
way too big. So yeah, we're having Christmas at my house this year because I have a big backyard, and I told everyone
yay.
we're getting a blow up pool, and we're getting a
nice.
barbecue, and we're cooking shitloads of big juicy prawns.
Nice.
And making a cheesecake, and we said
Yum.
no presents. We don't do presents anymore.
Ooh.
Because I feel like I don't know, it's hard when you're an adult getting presents for other adults. I don't know.
It's hard, yeah. It kind of just turns into a bit of like an obligation
Yes.
type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of the same. Like I'm actually having our Christmas at our
cool.
house as well for the first time ever.
Yeah.
I've never hosted a Christmas
I've done it
before.
once before when I lived in a group house and I had my family over. It
no
was really
way.
fun. It was really fun.
That would have been fun.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it's kind of like peak adult maturity
Mm-hmm.
when you've decided to host like the family
Oh.
Christmas, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very excited. It's
Yeah.
going to be just chaotic
I'm
because
going to
like
buy so
my
many Christmas
family.
decorations this weekend. Like, I'm so excited. I've got heaps already from last year, but that was when I lived in like a little unit. So I only got like a
Yeah.
little tree and like a couple of little like Christmas baubles and a bit of tinsel. And I'm like, no, what can I put outside the fucking house? And Dylan's like, do not put anything outside the house, please. I'm like, what do you mean?
No, you have
I know.
to.
He's like, I don't want to be that house. And I'm like, fine.
no.
He's scared of Christmas. I don't know. He's the actual
no,
Grinch. Yeah.
Me and my family, every year we do like our Christmas light drive. Like we drive
Yes.
around looking at Christmas lights.
He
on,
likes the Christmas lights, actually.
Christmas
that
Eve
gets
every
everyone
year.
going.
It gets everyone going. Me and my mum sit in the back of the car while like my dad or my boyfriend drives, and we get drunk. And
Mad? Didn't
We
think
like-
about that. What?
yes, drink champagne. Oh, it's fantastic. And we
sounds so
like
fun.
there's an app that you can get now where it tells you where all the best Christmas lights in your area
Really?
are. So we download the app, drink champagne and get drunk looking at Christmas lights, and then yeah, have a great old time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I highly
Okay, I'm
recommend
going to have
this.
to get that app.
Also, before we go too far off the track,
Yeah.
we are also doing a bit of a rambling episode. This, me talking about bloody murder cases and Christmas and yes, just really quickly before we go too far off the track, we're also doing a listener story episode. We're going to be doing that kind of soon-ish. So if anyone out there has really spooky paranormal story that they would like to share, please get in touch with us. You can email us at spookymountainpodcast@gmail.com or get in touch through our like Instagram, Facebook, whatever. We want to tell your story.
Yeah. Yeah, we're hoping to get it up and going like probably into the new year, we're thinking, like just at the start of the new year. And we kind
Beginning
of
of-
want these
yeah.
to be more casual, I guess. Like I know we do tend to ramble a little bit at the start and then we get down to our stories, but these ones I think we like to
Straight
talk
to it.
Yeah, like this is all about your stories. So and we know you all have them.
Yes.
So like yeah, and even if you know someone that has got a story that wants to share it, or even if it's just a really fucking scary thing that you've heard and you don't even know if it's true.
Yeah.
We would love to read it out. We'd love to share it because we had so much fun doing that last time on camera. So we probably won't have the backdrop. Are you going to have the backdrop?
I don't know. My backdrop is still up.
It's still up. I'm looking, yeah.
From our Halloween episode. So I don't know. I mean, I could.
I can't do mine anymore because I've sold the shells on Gumtree.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, well, I'll take mine down so that we're the same.
Yeah.
Did you want to get into your story for the week? Your UFO story?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to be telling a story that I think is fucking terrifying.
Okay.
It's pretty unbelievable. Like, it's very strange. It's an incident that happened to John Vasquez and over 1,300 other people. So, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I know, it's a lot of people involved in this. The following is all from this book, Incident at Fort Benning. So John Vasquez and his co-author, Bruce Holmes, actually went through years of regression therapy. So the book is actually filled with a lot of stuff that came from that therapy and also contains a lot of government documentation from this event that happened as well.
Yeah, that's always exciting.
Yeah. So this is pretty much the source of all of this. They experienced an attack that seemed like something from War of the Worlds. That's pretty much the best way to describe it for me. Like,
wow.
It's just really fucking scary. And it's unclear if this was actually an alien invasion or if it was something else.
Okay.
All he knows, though, is that Vasquez, he did experience something along with all these other people. But yeah, so I'll get into what happened. So it all begins at Fort Benning, which is a military training facility on the southern border of Alabama and Georgia in America. This place has been around since the Civil War and has highly trained soldiers here for weapons training. In 1977, it was a hot and sticky southern night, and all the soldiers were called to wait outside their barracks for further instruction. It was 7:30 p.m., and Vasquez states that this was unusual, so everyone was on edge and wondering what their superiors were going to tell them, because usually it's not that late at night. As they were all in formation, it must have been around 30 minutes of waiting. And at this point, a few of the men started to get distracted by movement up in the sky. One of the soldiers pointed out at a bright star to Vasquez, and he could see it moving around the sky in a fluid motion. This then started to cause a bit of a commotion, and the captain then decided to jump up onto the podium and try to distract everyone from what was happening in the sky. As he spoke about their training, the men all started to turn to the sky, and then an incredibly strange rumbling sound surrounded them.
Ooh.
The noise seemed to swish back and forth between the crowd of men, which was too much for them. The formation broke, and they all scattered, running around as fast as they could.
No way. They just forgot their training.
They freaked out, yeah. But as this was happening, a really bright blue and white light had come down fast from the dirt road that was opposite them and coming straight towards them.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's scary.
Yeah.
It's very scary.
So Vasquez, of course, started to panic and tried to get the guy in front of him to notice the light. And Vasquez waved his hands around only to see that the man was in a catatonic state. He was completely immobile and standing up, but asleep.
Oh, my God.
Vasquez started to try and move himself, but he was also stuck.
He was frozen as well.
Yeah. He started to look around. He could see some of the men were also frozen and noticed that this was because of the bright light. It seemed to be freezing everyone. However, there were some men that hadn't been affected by this yet, and they were just running around, just screaming.
Yeah.
Some of them have hidden in the barracks in small crawl spaces, and the captain on the podium was also frozen, and he had a really strange expression stuck on his face.
Shit.
Yeah.
No, I'm imagining a big mouth.
Yeah,
a big open mouth.
Yeah, me too. So one of them, they decided, look, I'm going to try and run and hide somewhere. This is fucking terrifying. And one of the guys that tried to make a run for it noticed Vasquez and was like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Move, come on. And he was like, oh, he's in a catatonic state, but you could tell he was awake still. Like he had some sort of movement in his face. Hear. So he knew that he wasn't completely lost. So he kind of dragged him and got Vasquez into this crawl space under the barracks, which is where everyone was hiding. So they both pretty much huddled together under this crawl space and were in complete panic and having no idea what was going on. As they laid there, they could hear the men outside screaming and wailing.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Fuck.
And they started to think to themselves that the Russians had attacked them. That's pretty much all that they could think of.
Right.
Then they started to hear the same loud rumbling noise as before. And as they looked outside, they could see a large, dark mass silhouetted in the night sky. They could see this very clearly because those blinding lights from before were below and it was casting a bright light underneath the mass. So it was making it super clear. They managed to get the group together inside. So there was a small group of them inside the barracks and trying to make a plan of action. Like, what the fuck is going on? One of the men said that they should all run, just make a run for it and try to get to the other barracks and just see who else they can find, as there was no hope for the others because they were all dead. Vasquez did not want to face the same fate as the others, so he actually just gathered a few of his friends and were like, let's try and escape through the crawl space. We'll just, go under the barracks and go out that way. Now, as they were making their way towards the crawl space, Vasquez started to hear a really strange robotic female voice speak to him. And it said, "It's okay, don't be afraid."
Oh my fucking God. What the fuck? Who is that and why are they talking like that? Why is there a robot? What is going on?
Scary robot lady. Oh. And none of the other men seemed to hear this voice at all. And they actually started to look really concerned at Vasquez because he told them what he heard. And they were like, nope, we didn't hear that.
And he would have just lost his shit as well. Yeah. Just suddenly being like, there's a robot woman. Oh.
Yeah, so they were very concerned for him. And, then as they finally all managed to get out of the crawl space, the light outside was so intense that Vasquez held his hand up so he could try and see, and he saw to the left a small dark figure. The figure then quickly ran into the light source, and then Vasquez heard a popping noise, and it felt as though he had been shot, and then he just completely blacked out after that. His next memory, which felt like only moments later, he was lying down with his eyes closed. He could feel he was being watched. He then heard two male voices telling him to keep his eyes closed, and then he started to feel as if he was floating. Vasquez stated that he kept blacking out and waking up again to this weightless feeling, but kept his eyes closed the entire time because he'd be way too scared to open them up. And he then woke up again to the same strange robotic voice asking him, "How do you feel?"
Oh my God.
He didn't reply because, first of all, he couldn't speak, but also he was insulted by the question because he just had no idea what was happening.
Yeah.
And he started to slightly open his eyes and he could feel he was being surrounded. He started to notice that there were rows of metallic slabs, rows and rows of them. And all the other soldiers were laying on top of them, just like himself.
He could see the other soldiers there on the slabs.
Yeah. And as he started to awaken a bit more, the robot voice told him to go back to sleep, and so he did.
fuck this robot voice. Who is this person telling him what to do?
Once he started to wake up again, he felt he was in a different location. He started to open his eyes and he could see a creature standing there. He describes it as having a large lumpy head, no ears, a small nose, a small mouth, and extremely large dark eyes.
Ooh.
Vasquez said that the being started to talk with him telepathically, as he could see that his mouth was not moving. Mm-hmm. It demanded Vasquez to look him into his eyes as he spoke to him. And at first he didn't want to, but he eventually did. He didn't really have a choice. He was like, okay. And when he looked into his eyes, he could see visions of the oceans and himself being surrounded by water with no land at all. He then saw a vision of a destroyed planet in a fiery blaze. Then another being came to him in his mind. It looked similar as the one before, but this was paler and its eyes looked like liquid. It was also wearing a white uniform, but appeared to be more human than the other being. And then pretty much as soon as he started to focus a little bit more on that being, he blacked out again. When he finally woke again, which seemed like only moments later, he was standing in formation in front of the captain, just before the lights had appeared.
Holy shit.
He wasn't standing in the same spot as he started, and he started thinking, oh my God, what is going on? And as he's starting to really think about what just happened, the captain screams, "Get back to your barracks now!" And the men started to head back to the barracks as fast as they could, and like a third of them all just fell over each other and collapsed to the ground because they completely lost their balance. Some of them started to throw up because they were so disorientated.
Yeah.
They started to check their watches and noticed that all their times were completely different on their watches. And as he got back into his barracks, he started to undress himself and he noticed that the uniform was in a very distressed state and it had a really weird smell to it, almost like a gas smell. Also, the buttons on his shirt and pants were all done up unevenly. And,
aliens don't know how to do up buttons.
And the knots on their shoes were just a complete mess. Like, just fucked.
There is something about that is a little bit adorable.
I know,
as
like,
well.
Make it look like they don't know.
Yeah, we could try and just do up the buttons and the shoelaces, but they just don't know how.
It's so obvious. It's like, wow, well, a human did not do this, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, everyone pretty much went straight to bed that night, but started to display some very strange behaviour. Some of the men slept with the sheets over their heads. Others did the same, but they had a flashlight on underneath. And others claimed that they were seeing terrifying hallucinations on the walls. Vasquez is unsure if he slept like the others, but ended up waking up very late in the morning. Doesn't remember ever going to sleep. Some of the others were already up, and they were in a daze that morning, just very slowly eating breakfast. None of them really seemed to remember what had happened, just like Vasquez, as at that point he didn't remember anything past the crawl space under the barracks. That was actually his last memory. So the next few weeks, it just got weirder and weirder. They noticed that their commanding officers had left them to fend for themselves. So they all thought that this was part of their training and maybe that they were being assessed remotely.
They do, I know in Australia, like, the army does weird
see, they
shit
kind
like that,
of
but not to that degree, though.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, they're like, oh, okay, so they're just kind of are gone now. So, yeah, they just assumed that they were still doing training, and they started to conduct war games with the other neighbouring camps.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this place is massive. It's pretty much a suburb, like a town.
Okay.
It's huge.
Yep.
So there's lots of different sections. So this is all one huge it's very hard to kind of understand because obviously I do not have any military background or anyone with a military background really. So it's quite hard to understand it, but I feel like there's like multiple camps that are all under like different captains. And this is about 500 people.
Right. I don't know if it's the same at all in terms of like size and amount of people, but my brother is in the army.
Yeah.
And so I do have like a vague idea as to
yes, that's right.
how a location like this can kind of be almost like a little town.
Yeah.
You know, or like
it's massive. Like I couldn't believe it. I'm glad I kind of looked at it on Google Maps because it kind of it gave me a bit more of a clearer perspective of how big this really is.
And some of them are huge as well. Some of the major bases are like in Australia anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot of room in Australia. Yeah. So they pretty much were like, look, we'll just go to, you know, it's all obviously not real. They're not shooting each other, but you know, we'll go to war with one of the other camps and we'll kind of show them, you know, how good we are without our leaders. So in this actual camp, there was about 250 men, sorry, not 500. So 250 men in this camp. And Vasquez was actually the one running it at the moment because he kind of took charge of the situation. He was one of the higher ups at this point, but, you know, once their superiors left, it was up to Vasquez. He was like, fuck, all right. So the soldiers in his camp that he was running, they actually claimed during this time that the sky turned around like a gyroscope, meaning that they felt that they were not moving at all, but the sky was moving around them.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird things happening. So that was one of the weird things that they described. They also got trapped by an invisible force field that was preventing them from moving down a hill. They're actually pretty much out in the wilderness at this point. Okay. And they were on top of this hill. They're trying to make their way down. And literally over 200 men, and they hit an invisible force field and they could not get past it, and they started to absolutely freak out. And they noticed that if enough of them worked together, they could slightly move the field a little bit further and further. So they were all trying to do that. And then some other ones that weren't really doing that started to panic because they said, if you look down the bottom of the hill, there's an identical group of soldiers at the bottom of the hill in a circle. And they were just standing in a circle at the bottom of the hill, and they were freaking out.
Of course they were
that
freaking
looks like
out.
us, but at the bottom of the hill.
But also just imagine being with that massive of a group of people and hitting a fucking force field. What? You'd be like...
Exactly. Yeah. So the gyroscope thing is kind of... With the gyroscope and the force field, I feel like it was like in a weird dome like that they were in. And that's how I'm kind of interpreting it.
That's what it sounds like. But why is there another group?
Yes, that's right. So there was another group, and I don't mention this in this story, but there is actually in the book another group of, like another camp of a few hundred other men also mentioned later on that they noticed a similar group of them as well. So there was actually a few of them. They thought there was like a rogue army going around, and they were freaked the fuck out because it wasn't obeying orders or anything, and they were freaking out thinking that there was like some shit going down. So some really scary shit. So a few days after this event, they were still dealing with this whole military scenario they thought they were meant to be in. So they were totally exhausted at this point. They were getting no clear instructions from anyone. They hadn't had a proper meal or showered in days. They wanted it to end. Vasquez actually contacted the general and asked for all this to end on behalf of his men. He was like, we don't know what is going on. Like, we actually kind of thought this would just be done, like in a day, and it's just going and going, and we're kind of lost. And the general was like, okay, well, how about I organize a helicopter and I'll take you guys back to the barracks? But apparently he didn't seem so clear on that, and it was like it could or could not happen. It didn't seem too certain. So they weren't very sure if they were actually going to get picked up or not. So they pretty much had to go back out into the wilderness and just wait to be found.
So the general wasn't like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why are you out there in the first place?
No, he was
just like...
He wasn't... So the general's kind of the one that's like in charge of this entire, like I think the whole Fort Benning thing. And he's like, I don't fucking know what's going on. Like, you guys just...
I'll maybe pick you up.
Yeah, like he's got other shit to worry about. But he was like trying to be like, we need to understand what's going on.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, so he's like, yeah, maybe. Okay, you're a helicopter. And then so they were meant to meet... They were meant to get this helicopter, hopefully get dropped off to their barracks. Really, really vague idea of what's going on. Now, there's one night they were still out there. They had no ammo left, no food, no sleep, just absolutely fucking defeated, way too tired to carry on. They were completely willing to accept defeat. They were like, we don't fucking care anymore. And they started to see their helicopter in the distance. And they were like, oh my gosh, they could see it had the spotlight. It was looking for them. And they're like, yes, amazing.
Thank fuck.
And when this happens, it usually means, okay, there's obviously, if we're going to pick this group of men up, that means it's all over. The whole thing's over.
Yep.
And when you go and exit a training period like this, they actually let off heaps of gunfire to kind of make it clear for everyone in the area that it's all over. Everyone go back. But they didn't hear anything. They were just kind of waiting, and they're like, what the fuck? Can they see us? Like, what's going on? And they're watching this helicopter, and then all of a sudden behind the helicopter, this huge, bright, blinding light, like before, just appeared. It was so bright. And then
I bet they were just so done at this point. They were like,
the men were
again.
like having... Yeah, some of them were like in full panic mode because they weren't sure, I can't go through this again. Is this part of the training? Is this the helicopter? Is this a fucking UFO? Like, they can't fucking handle it.
Psychological torture.
It literally is.
Be in that state and then to be seeing that shit.
They fucking have no idea what's going on. And some of the men are just like, fuck this, all right. And they run towards the light to be like, hey, yes, we're here. And as soon as the men walk into that light, it throws them about 600 yards away, like completely relocates them, and they're just in like a completely different section, and they're like, what the fuck? What's going on? They see him at the other end of the field, and they're like, oh my God. So that was really weird. So then obviously a lot of the men just stopped and waited for the helicopter, but the helicopter just never saw him and just in the distance just kept going looking for him and then just disappeared. And they're like,
what the fuck is going on?
What? Absolutely insane. So they ended up, they had to keep doing their missions. They were just like, they had to go to certain places and drop off like certain things. And so like, fuck, I may as well just try and see if we can see anyone along the way and do our little missions here and there. And they ended up finding some Jeeps, and they just all got on their fucking Jeeps and they all just drove back to the barracks. So like, we'll just take ourselves back. Don't worry. Like, it's very far away. We'll just fucking get there ourselves. Finally, they got there. They were getting themselves fed, undressed, and they were waiting for their next orders because they, at this point, they're like, okay, this is probably all part of the plan. But now we'll just see what's going to happen, what's going on tomorrow. And it's now about 10:30 p.m. that night, and all the lights in the barracks start to flicker quite badly, and the men all start to panic. And just remember, like, these men are going to war, like, and this is fucking traumatizing them. Like, this is
of course
traumatic stuff.
These are like hardened men.
That's right. They've been trained to handle the most horrible situations.
Oh, yeah.
And this is like absolute torture. And, they're all second guessing themselves like, I can't fucking do this shit. Like, what is happening?
I would be crying for my mother at this point.
Yes.
Like,
absolutely.
Take me to my mum.
This is so traumatic. So they all start panicking, going, oh, my God, this can't be happening again. They're looking around for the authorities. There's no one there. And they're like, fucking hell. All right. And they all leave together. They all get in the car and they all drive down the dirt road to try and find the general. They see the general and he's driving up towards them in his car. And he said, oh, don't worry at all. It's just like some weird electrical issue with the lights. Nothing to worry about. However, later on that night, they all happened to encounter, including the general, a massive light object above them. They were all ordered to fire a missile at it. So it was the same giant.
Oh, shit.
Light. Yeah. So this is only about maybe about 10 minutes later, just a bit further down the road.
Oh my fucking God,
Yeah.
these poor guys.
So this light came back. He was like, all right, shoot a missile at it. And the missile went up and this huge light source consumed the missile and then just dropped it like it was trash on the ground.
Oh, fuck.
And just didn't engage or anything. He just dropped it on the ground.
Just
and they were
dropped
like,
it like it was nothing.
Fuck? And they're like, all right, kid, shoot at it, shoot at it, shoot at it.
Yeah.
So they all just started shooting at the object and it started shooting smaller light balls, smaller balls of light at the men. One of them actually hit a helicopter, which caused it to malfunction.
Oh, shit.
And the soldiers that actually got hit by these little light balls got severe red welts all over their bodies. Vasquez actually got hit on the leg and he had this rash as well. But it was just I'm saying rash, but it was like huge sores, like massive welts.
Right.
And this lasted for hours. This was going on for a long time. Vasquez had managed to get himself back to the barracks because he was like, fuck, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. And he went into that same crawl space. He just hid right under there in his little safe zone.
Crawl space. Yeah. His safe space.
And once this event had finished, there were no more attacks like this. They were all still unsure for the days after if this was an elaborate training exercise, as no men had actually died, but they'd been extremely messed with mentally and they had injuries. So they're like, oh, well, I guess it didn't kill us, so maybe it is kind of all an exercise. They tried to move on and not ask too many questions about what had happened until a female lieutenant was assigned to their location. Now, this was strange as Fort Benning is known to be predominantly male. But they later found out that she was a psychiatrist. And they think she was there to help erase their memories as to what had happened.
Oh, fuck.
Yes.
Yeah, that's shady as shit.
Exactly. Now, a lot of the men that actually went to speak with her came out afterwards and weren't able to remember what had happened.
That's sus.
And this is not an uncommon tactic with the military, because in World War I, there is proof that they had experimented with this. And also, let's not forget MK Ultra.
Yeah, so it's like there is a history of the military doing this. This is not pure conspiracy
Exactly,
theory.
that's right.
This is something that has happened.
This is proven that it has happened.
Yeah.
But in this case, we're not sure, but it seems like
it, yeah.
seems like it probably did. So, yeah, I think that they probably would have done that with no issues. But anyway, Vasquez didn't actually start to remember any of this until the 80s. So this all happened in 1977, and it was around early to mid-80s. He actually started to have a lot of these situations and events pop into his dreams when he was having dreams. And he was like, what is going on? This is crazy. So he tried hypnosis therapy. So that's where he really started to regain a lot of these memories. And after April in 1989, he had remembered some incredible details about these events and also managed to get a hold of declassified documents that were trying to cover up the event.
Oh, no fucking way. Oh, that's exciting.
So some of the documents state that during this time, in September 1977, there was a rubella outbreak which claimed to be responsible for the welts that they had. But the weird thing is, at this point, they had all been completely vaccinated for this, so it wasn't even an issue. And also...
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
To be in the military, you were, so highly vaccinated against, everything.
Absolutely.
Rubella would be, such a standard, vaccination that you get.
And they were saying, like, if there was a rubella outbreak at Fort Benning, the CDC would have been contacted, and there is no evidence.
Nothing.
They've never contacted anyone. And they're only a 2-hour drive away. So it's like, okay, so what do you mean there was no rubella outbreak?
No, and like the whole situation was like these men got like the welts and the marks on their bodies after the little balls of light, and it was sudden.
Yeah.
It was a situation. It wasn't like, oh, they woke up and
Yeah,
there
that's
was like
right.
these marks on them, you
They
know.
had itchy bites. They had little itchy bites
Yeah.
on them. So Vasquez actually also has his medical records to prove what had happened to him. He's got them all still. However, there are now no official military documents to prove that his unit even existed. So they wiped everything. So he was part of the Delta Company 1st Battalion, 1st Infantry. So that was what he was in. And they're saying that that group never existed, which is hundreds of people just wiped off. No, they were never here.
This is if you're gonna discredit someone and make someone seem crazy. This is how you do it. You're just like, what are you talking about? Your like rank didn't even exist or doesn't even exist. Like
how it's so horrible. Luckily, he was actually able to contact another soldier who's Bruce Holmes. So he was also able to verify this incident and provide a lot of other documentation. Now, Bruce Holmes was actually a higher ranking than him as well. So, that's he kind of helped co-write the book there and patch all the story together. But this story has so much more detail that I literally could not even touch on. It is insane. So if you do find this exciting or anything, I highly encourage you to go read his book, Incident at Fort Benning. I'll definitely link it in the show notes because I think I'm definitely going to buy this book. I mean, I was reading, I was just reading parts of it and I was like, this is absolutely insane. I cried it's just crazy. And I love all this stuff. And I don't know. It's hard with these ones, like if I believe it or not. But like, I think it's a great story either way.
This is fantastic. Yeah. Especially with the whole like them. Oh, it's tricky because like it's very brave. If this is not real, it's very brave for these people to come out and be like, we were part of the military. This happened. There were hundreds of men with us.
Also, I forgot to mention, Bruce Holmes, when he came out and said that he knew this happened, he was still at Fort Benning, like still up in the rankings. Right. So he was actually still employed and was like, he was like, this happened. So he like, and still was employed there. Like he risked his entire career and livelihood. Everything. Yeah. To like commend him and be like, yeah, I agree that this happened. So that's kind of another level to it of evidence, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And like from my experience, like with my brother being in the army, if you're part of the military or the army or the navy or whatever, like part of the armed forces, like that career literally becomes your whole life at the detriment of like relationships and everything. Like they're so dedicated to like what they do, and they're very proud people in a way as well. So for someone to risk that much to kind of back up someone that like someone else and what they're saying is a big thing. Like I think it's very like confirming.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
I forgot to mention but it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. I know. I've only listened to a podcast on this once, like a couple of years ago, and I was like, I never want to forget this. Like, I've never heard of this. Wild. Yeah, it's absolutely. And there's so much more like this and this again. Like it's just that much crazy stuff that happens. It's like, this is terrifying. This is 100% like a movie. Like what?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fantastic story. I've never really heard, like, you hear of, you know, abduction stories and like UFO sightings, but this is just so kind of
action packed.
Yeah. And there's so much happening, and those poor people to just go through so much and to be also at that level of like exhaustion, physical and like mental exhaustion, and things just keep on happening. And then after all that happening, to just be totally denied that
you'd be like,
it could possibly be real. It would definitely fuck with your head a little bit, I think, you know. Oh, what a fantastic story.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I love that. I
loved it. Mine's going to be quite different.
Oh, I'm so good to settle in. I'm excited
so,
for this.
yeah, it is a bit sad. So if you're feeling slightly fragile, then I don't know, get the tissues.
Oh, Jesus.
Ready.
Right.
No, it's not. It is a very sad topic, but I don't think you're going to cry. So
I'm otherwise like, I'm always weird with these. I was like, I'll otherwise get very emotional, or my brain just goes into weird, like, funny mode because I like panic and don't want to get emotional. You know, when you get then like, I just have to make a joke of it so I don't get upset.
Just laugh about it. It's fine. Just make a joke. It's all good. I don't think you're going to be joking about this.
Oh, shit. Okay.
But I don't think you're going to be crying either.
No, I'm joking.
Yeah. All right. I will try you.
Okay.
Let's go. So, on March 11th, 2011, a devastating magnitude 9.1 earthquake rocked Eastern Asia's seafloor, sending a wave of water the height of a 12-story building into Japan's coast.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
So, do you remember the tsunami that hit Japan
Absolutely.
in 2011? Fuck, I don't remember what I was doing, but I remember like the reaction that I had when I first heard about it. It was just like, like my breath was...
It was terrifying, seeing that.
It was...
The footage of it was fucked up.
It's fucked up. Oh my God, I've watched so much footage of it researching this story. So... More than 15,000 people lost their lives in the tsunami. Millions lost access to running water and electricity. And more than 120,000 buildings were destroyed within just a matter of minutes.
Oh, my God.
To date, there are still over 2,500 people missing.
What?
Which is a lot of people.
Yeah.
This Tohoku earthquake was the most devastating in the nation's recorded history. It was 2:46 p.m. local time when the earthquake started. Centered 45 miles east of Tohoku at a depth of 15 miles below the surface of the ocean, it shook the earth for a whopping 6 full minutes.
Oh my God.
6 full minutes. So when I read that it lasted 6 minutes, I googled like the average kind of earthquake time, and average it's like 3.5-4 minutes.
Okay.
It can last between it can last seconds or it can last minutes.
So long.
It was really long time and a very, very high magnitude.
Yeah.
So this earthquake, it triggered 128-foot waves that crashed into northeastern Japan. The wave reached 40 meters above the shoreline, which is huge. A total of 217 square miles of land were just totally flooded, which included the destruction of hospitals, schools, businesses, homes, railways, and everything else, including, of course, people's lives. It was just like a steamroller through these towns. The tsunami also devastatingly caused a cooling system failure at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, leading to the infamous meltdown. After the disaster, as if nature wanted the last laugh, a snowstorm started coming down upon the survivors. Just as a last little fuck you.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very, very upsetting. So Japan's Reconstruction Agency estimated that the financial damage reached $199 billion. Meanwhile, the World Bank estimates that the total economic cost to be $235 billion. Which is just you can't even imagine that amount of money. It's just mind-boggling. In the 65 years after the end of World War II, this is the toughest and most difficult crisis for Japan, said then Prime Minister Naito Kan. Mm-hmm. But as Japan forged ahead with its reconstruction, the disaster lingered in other ways, more supernatural ways. Shortly after the tsunami, traumatized survivors began to see the faces of drowned victims in puddles. They saw deceased loved ones wandering around the abandoned beaches and appearing at the doorsteps of their family homes. Silent figures drenched in water were also seen hailing cabs, only to disappear once they climbed into the back seat. And these weren't one-off sightings. Residents all across mainly the hardest hit cities were reporting such apparitions. Seeing a tsunami ghost in the months after the earthquake was not a rare occasion by any means, and became just a widely accepted part of the aftermath of the tsunami.
Yeah, I've heard of this actually. It's so common that everyone was pretty much seeing them. Which is
pretty
terrifying.
Much everyone has seen a tsunami ghost, and it's just like, oh, no one thinks that you're crazy. No. It's just like, oh yeah, I've seen a tsunami ghost. You know, like it's just very, very common. So it was claimed by one reporter who had lived in Japan for 18 years prior to the disaster that the encounters of ghosts and spirits after the tsunami was almost on epidemic proportions.
Yeah, wow.
Especially, it's just like so many reports were coming in every day of ghosts, especially in the town of Ishinomaki. Ishinomaki. Ishinomaki suffered 3,097 deaths. And also just a huge number of people are still missing from the town after the disaster.
Yeah.
An incredible 50,000 buildings had been destroyed in this town.
Oh my God, that's a lot of buildings.
50,000 buildings. After this, the decimated city saw most of its population just relocate to different areas of the country or even abroad because they just couldn't bear to be around.
Oh, you'd have to just leave.
Oh, you couldn't be around all that sadness, you know. In 2016, a student of sociology named Yuka Kudo from Tohoku Gakuen University. I have to apologize to anyone who speaks Japanese because I'm hoping that I'm not murdering these.
Yeah, the Aussies
butchering these words. Butchering the words too badly. I went over these words so many times and still I'm just like, So Yuka Kudo, she travelled to Ishinomaki to study this incredible ghostly epidemic. But in particular, she wanted to focus on the countless number of cab drivers who have claimed to pick up ghostly passengers on the side of the road only to just disappear before arriving at their destination. As I mentioned before, this is a common shared experience within the hardest hit areas.
Yeah.
She interviewed 100 taxi drivers from the area, and many responded with their own first-hand reports of lost ghostly travellers seeking rides to mysterious destinations. The first cabbie that was interviewed told Kudo of an encounter he had in the summer of 2011. It had been only a few months since the tsunami, and there were barely any customers due to the widespread devastation.
Oh, yeah. God.
There was no one around to even give rides to. So he was very just naturally shocked to suddenly see a young woman hailing him and his taxi down in a particularly hard hit area where construction had barely even raised buildings enough to make it not seem just totally desolate and destroyed.
Yeah.
So weirdly, the woman was wearing a heavy winter coat in the middle of summer. And this woman was also completely drenched from head to toe, dripping in water. The driver barely had time to realise how weird this was, considering that it hadn't even rained in days before the woman just briskly climbed into the back seat and strangely asked to be driven to the largely abandoned Minamihama district. This area had been completely deserted since the tsunami.
Jesus.
There really was just nothing left standing there. So that's pretty creepy.
That's so scary.
It is pretty scary. That area is almost empty, the cabbie said while switching on the taxi meter. Are you sure you want to go there? He asked. There was a long silence. Then, in a shivering and weak, almost scared voice, the woman asked, "Have I died?" It's so scary. The terrified taxi driver turned around to face the customer, but found absolutely nothing nor anyone in his car.
No.
But there was a distinct wet mark on the car seat where the dripping woman had been sitting.
Okay. That's why I'd never be a cab driver. I'm scared of ghost passengers.
The ghost passengers, all those ghost passengers, I know. I used to do a lot of like night driving, right? Because I used to work like night shift and I'm just a bit of a night owl. And I like driving through the Blue Mountains, there's a lot of really dark roads. And I used to get so creeped out sometimes that I would like look into my rearview mirror and I would see someone like sitting in my back seat.
Oh, Jesus.
Like a ghost. I don't know. It's just this thing that like got stuck in my brain for a while.
I mean, it is scary. There's a lot of roads in the Blue Mountains don't have street lights or anything.
No,
and you just,
no.
Oh, that's scary. Okay.
Yeah, very scary. So, another taxi driver told Kudo that he picked up a confused-looking man in his 20s who kept silently and aimlessly just pointing forward when asked where he needed to go. Finally, he said simply, Hiyoriyama, which is a mountain reserve near the city of Ishinomaki. This area is equally as abandoned due to the destruction from the tsunami. After careening up the mountain that overlooks Ishinomaki, the driver stopped his car so that he could drop off his customer on a plateau at the summit. But when he turned around to be paid by the passenger, the man was gone and there was nobody in his car. So it's kind of like a repeating theme.
Yeah.
Is that it's like money. Customer in a deserted area and they get picked up and then they disappear.
Yeah.
So this is only a very select few experiences of taxi drivers that have experienced ghostly passengers that are still looking for their way home beyond the grave. And it isn't only the taxi drivers of this area that are witnessing spooky and supernatural happenings after the tsunami. One man in Kurihara said that he now absolutely despises the rain as he constantly sees the eyes of tsunami victims he once knew in the puddles that form around him.
Oh my fucking God.
Imagine seeing that all around you.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
I know. It's very sad as well. It's constantly being reminded.
It's so scary, but so sad as well because you know a lot of the people that were killed in this event. Like
pretty much everyone
knew
someone. At least a few people who died.
Yeah,
you know.
definitely.
So the ghost of an old woman who died in the wave is said to haunt a refugee home in Onagawa and is said to regularly sit herself down for a cup of tea in her old favourite seat in the room.
Wow.
The cushion that would be left out for her was purportedly soaked in seawater every time her visits had finished.
Wow.
I think that it's so nice that they leave they leave like a tea and a pillow out for her. That's sweet. It's nice. Yeah. In Talgaho, one fire station reported that they received incessant and constant phone calls all through the day and night with no one at the other end. they ended up having the phone call traced, which led them to ruins in an area that had been just flattened by the tsunami.
Wow.
Yes. The eerie phone calls didn't stop until the firefighters returned back to the ruins to pray for the dead. Then the calls just stopped completely.
Wow. Okay.
But even aside from these already spooky occurrences, there are more profound reports of tsunami ghosts than what I've mentioned. There is a well-known Buddhist priest in Japan named Reverend Tao Kaneda. And Kaneda was kind of like the on-call Buddhist priest after the tsunami hit. And he was on call to like bless and send off all the victims who had been killed by the water. He would end up performing over 200 funeral services for victims after the tsunami. Yeah, and it's really sad. I watched an interview with him, and he said that his first 2 blessings were 2 like 7-year-old girls.
Oh my God.
Yeah, who were at school when the tsunami hit, which is, broke my heart. Yeah, so he would end up performing over 200 funeral services for these victims. And because the power was wiped from the Fukushima power plant being destroyed by the water, none of these bodies were able to be cremated after they died. Yeah, so and cremation is the traditional form of burial within Japan as well.
So they weren't getting the send-off that they were supposed to.
They weren't getting their proper send-off, and because of the way the land had been affected, all these bodies were
stuck. Yeah.
Basically in like
limbo.
They were in like almost like a mass grave.
Right.
It's not exactly like a mass grave. They weren't all just like chucked into a hole. They had like these dividers.
Yeah.
And they were in like boxes. But it wasn't like individual graves. Yeah. So and they were kept like this until like the crematories were able to function again. Yeah. So they did eventually get cremated.
Yeah, I'm sure they would have,
Yeah, but I mean, it's still not nice to kind of have to make these like mass graves and just put people in them. Kaneda became like the center spiritual confidant for those who were affected by the tsunami, giving spiritual comfort for those who had lost loved ones and those who were just super traumatized by what they had experienced. Yeah. He also became the priest who would try and help those who claimed they were being contacted and even possessed by the spirits who didn't know that they had been killed by the tsunami in 2011.
Right, okay.
The one story that Kaneda speaks about the most is that of a man named Takashi Ono, which is a pseudonym. So Takashi and his family claimed that he had become completely possessed after the tsunami disaster. Usually he was a very nice, ordinary man who lived a pretty basic life in the same town as Reverend Kaneda. The tsunami was miles away from where they both lived in their own homes, so they weren't directly affected by the disaster in the same way that the survivors in Ishinomaki and the surrounding towns were. So they didn't kind of like directly see the disaster and see people dying and stuff. But, you know, they were affected in their own way, I guess.
Yeah.
So while Kaneda helped countless people bury their loved ones and help them out spiritually, Takashi Ono stayed away from the disaster zone and tried as hard as he could to just block it out of his mind and ignore it. That was until he decided he would just finally go see the just flattened towns on his own with no one with him.
Right.
It had been months and he felt like he just couldn't avoid it any longer. And it was actually only about a week after the tsunami that Takashi actually realized the extent of the disaster. So he just kind of thought it was like a tsunami that came through, but he didn't
Oh,
realize.
really? Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah, like he knew people had died here and there, but he had absolutely no idea that the country had just experienced one of the
Okay.
most like heartbreaking and horrific events in its history.
Yeah.
So yeah, he drove down to the beach at one of the most affected towns, and he was just absolutely ruined by what he saw there. He had no idea of the destruction and how bad it was. He stayed in the location for a while, looking at the broken down houses and buried
that'd be
businesses.
So sad walking around
Yeah.
there.
Just emptiness, you know.
Yeah.
And he just spent some time thinking about all the poor souls that were lost and what it would have been like when the tsunami hit that day.
Yeah.
He then headed back home that evening to sit down for dinner with his family. He had his regular nightly green tea and then a can of beer. And then bizarrely, out of nowhere, Takashi was found rolling around on the ground of his backyard, making animal noises.
Oh.
Growling and hissing and barking.
Okay. The green
Just
tea.
totally
Jesus.
out of nowhere. Yeah. It's a special kind of green tea, maybe.
Oh my god.
He started running out into the field behind his house, just absolutely rolling and covering himself in mud,
Holy shit.
to the horror of his wife and his mother, who had never seen him do anything like this before.
No.
He woke up the next day having absolutely no knowledge or memory of this. Takashi said he just felt totally normal and fine, like nothing had happened. This was completely out of the ordinary for Takashi. He had no history of mental health issues. He'd never had seizures before. Really, he had had no health problems whatsoever. This strange behavior continued for 3 days straight.
Oh.
3 days straight every night. He was also found to be talking in a deep and ominous guttural voice.
Oh god, I hate that. Oh.
I know. It's very
scares me.
creepy. Yeah. He began threatening violence against his family and friends, and he started talking about the dead, which is something that he'd never
Okay.
done before. So it's all very sus. His family just were beside themselves.
Yeah.
And they eventually persuaded him to go to a priest to get blessed and to try to just send away the imposing spirits. And the priest to do this would be Kaneda, the priest from the Buddhist priest from before. Once Takashi had arrived to see the priest, Kaneda recited the Buddhist sutras, which are kind of like prayers.
Yeah.
And Takashi was splashed with holy water. And then, abruptly and seemingly out of nowhere, Takashi returned to his senses and found himself with wet hair and clothes,
Yeah.
suddenly filled with a sensation of tranquility and release.
Oh my god.
My head was light, he said. In a moment, the thing that had been there had disappeared. I felt fine physically, but also my nose was blocked as if I'd come down with a heavy cold. So it's all a bit confusing for him. There have been multiple possession stories very similar to this after the tsunami.
Wow.
And
Really?
it's like a semi-common
Okay.
thing. And Kaneda is not the only Buddhist priest who has supposedly just cleansed people of lingering spirits such as this. So Japan has had a long-standing cultural relationship with ghosts, or the yurei, as it's called in Japan. In the Shinto religion, yurei means literally the way of the gods. And the Shinto religion is the indigenous faith of the Japanese people. Another description of the yurei is a ruined or departed spirit. This is like the opposite of a peaceful or satisfied spirit. So I think what the case is, they have kind of like two sides of the coin. They have a spirit who's kind of like accepted their death and they're peacefully on the other side. And then the other side of the coin is kind of like someone who's died suddenly or really tragically, and they weren't ready to go, and they're not happy about being dead, and they're still kind of got unfinished business, to fulfill. So in Shinto, the Shinto religion, it is believed that soul and spirit inhabit all things animate and inanimate. Many Japanese people came to believe that because the tsunami took such a huge amount of victims before they were ready to go, and so suddenly as well, these restless spirits still wander around the streets and the houses of the devastated towns, just looking for their families, friends and homes to return to, not knowing that they've passed on already. So British reporter Richard Lloyd Parry, who travelled to Japan to report on the phenomenon of ghost sightings after the tsunami, thinks that these paranormal experiences are not a matter of the supernatural, but more so that it's the manifestation of a nation processing its collective intense trauma and grief.
Oh.
Which is a very interesting take, I think. I think it's a very...
Okay.
I think it's an interesting take, but I think there's only so far that can take you. Like, when so many people are like, there was a woman in the back of my car and I don't know, like, where she went.
Yeah.
And she was soaking wet.
It seems like there's too many people seeing and experiencing this for it to be thought of as something else, really. Like...
Yeah, and, like, so many different types of encounters as well.
Yeah.
So something that he does agree with is the principle that these spirits are real to whoever believes to have seen them.
Yeah.
And in that context, they should be taken seriously.
Yeah.
He said, what matters is that people believe in them. It doesn't really matter whether you or I believe in ghosts. What's real is the suffering and pain of these people, which is a very understanding opinion, but also quite frustrating as well, because it's like, it's cool. Like, I don't know. I would prefer to just be like believed that I'm seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
ghosts,
okay, you saw something. I don't believe you, but you probably saw something that you believe you did, but
that you believe is a ghost.
Yeah, you believe it's a ghost,
but I don't believe it's a ghost.
God.
So, other coastal towns across Japan have found other creative ways to grieve the loss of their loved ones that died in the 2011 disaster.
Okay.
For instance, the town of, Otsuki maybe, has a phone booth that is called the Phone of the Wild, and it sits atop a hill overlooking the ocean that allows those in mourning to send messages to their loved ones in another realm.
That's so nice. I like that.
It is so nice. It's the most beautiful looking like setup. It's amazing. A man called Sasaki Itaru installed the phone box in the garden of his own house.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's so lovely. Inside the box there is an old black telephone that carries voices into the wind. Thousands of people make the pilgrimage there every year.
I can imagine.
All over the world. Yeah. They are people who have lost someone who pick up the receiver to speak to the other side. The owner of the phone, Sasaki, says that over 35,000 people have made the long trip out to his property to visit the Phone of the Wild, or the Wind Phone, as it's also known as.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to think about the amount of death and devastation that happened in Japan during this disaster in relation to the supernatural. I mean, if anywhere is going to be haunted, it's going to be somewhere like here, I think. Even if somehow it's just the imprint, the raw emotion that is being felt in these areas, it's still incredible. And like the proof of the power of human beings, I think,
Yeah, definitely.
And even though we see like Japan as mostly physically healed from the disaster, people from this area are actually tormented every day by these paranormal sightings of ghosts.
Yeah, right.
So it's not like
It's not over. It's still going.
It's not over.
No.
So I think sometimes like ghosts and paranormal, it's like, oh, well, that's comforting because we can see that they exist further on the other side. But with this, it's just like a constant reminder of like the death and tragedy that happened to their loved ones.
Absolutely.
And they
it's
just
a horrible
see them.
thing. Like even looking at having the buildings rebuilt on top of locations that you already knew and like had memories of that are now gone.
Oh my God.
And you just be looking at it going, no, that's where I used to live. Like what the fuck is this new building or
I know.
like
It's so sad. Something that I read was that a lot of people actually died. Okay, there's like two types of sad to this part. So a lot of people died because they were going back into their homes to retrieve, it's almost like a special kind of like book that holds like the names and the background information of their ancestors.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of people died because they were running back to their homes to grab this.
Oh, God.
Even more so, they didn't grab money, they didn't grab other possessions, they just wanted this book because it's like a family history.
Okay.
And they kind of believe that having this written family history is like keeping your ancestors alive in a way and telling their story. And so people died because they returned to get these books, but also many people lost their ancestral information in the floods.
Oh.
Because the water destroyed them.
Yeah.
And they're like old books, like really old books that are like hundreds of years
so
old,
it just
you know.
made everything just chaos. Like
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
it's
very
just so
spiritual over there as well. Like the people are very
so spiritual.
very much attached to their ancestry. So I feel like if you're more open to that side of that type of spiritual world, I guess, you know, like I guess that anywhere in the world there will be some trauma everywhere you go, but I guess it just depends on the people that are living there of who's picking up on it.
Totally.
Like
yeah, totally. I think so. And I think like also because a lot of the people who a big chunk, so this is again very sad, a big chunk of the people who died in the tsunami were children because it was a school day, and so they got trapped in the schools.
They would have all been in schools.
They were all in the schools, and as well as children, it was elderly people because
they can't run.
They couldn't run.
No.
Oh my God, Steph.
That's crazy.
Some of the footage that I saw, you could see, okay, for anyone who isn't up for hearing this part, maybe just block your ears for a second. But there's like footage of, like, you can see the waves starting to come in and you can see elderly people trying to walk as fast as they can away from it. And people are just passing them. Running past them, and obviously in that moment, like you don't. What do you do? So no one's to blame for that, but it's like those poor elderly grandmas and grandpas, and they're trying to like get away, and they can't. They're old, like oh my God, and kids as well is very sad. So I think that's also like an extra added level of tragedy on top of what's already
extremely
happened.
Vulnerable people, majority of them that got
very vulnerable and just so much emotion attached to it. That's very, very sad.
It's a story that I don't know where I heard the whole story about this, but it's such a traumatic event that happened. But hearing about the amount of people that have seen the spirits of their family, friends, neighbors, like everything just ongoing constantly everywhere they go.
Wild.
It's just non-stop. It's really sad.
So the Buddhist priest, Kaneda, he actually, there's a show on Netflix called Unsolved Mysteries.
Maybe that's where I've seen it.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
where.
that's probably
so
where I've seen it.
It's a pretty like popular show.
Okay.
So, and that's where like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people writing about this, like, you know, phenomena that's happening with the ghost.
Amazing. Okay.
This is where what they're referencing is this priest interview in Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been like reports, all sorts of reports, and people kind of like investigating and
Yeah.
very interesting.
Very interesting. Fuck yeah. Okay.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
We actually got a really, sad one. That's
It's-
probably the saddest one we've had, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, it was really hard to kind of like research. Oh my god. So
Yeah.
this Unsolved Mystery episode, there was like an interview with a man who like found his baby and
Yeah.
like, it's just
I watched
don't
it all
know.
once when it came out. I remember it, but I think that's when I first heard about it. I was like, oh my God, this is really fucking sad.
It's horrific. Yeah.
Jesus. All right.
Anyway, maybe we should do nice, happy, fun ones next week.
Yeah,
just
I'll
to-
do a really fun one. I will.
Let's both do fun ones.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Leave us a review, please. We would love you forever. Really helps us get out there, gets people knowing that we exist. And we've had a couple of you buy our merch so far, which is really
Oh my
exciting.
god. Yeah, what the fuck? We now officially are going to be sending out merch to people because they bought it.
Yeah, a couple of t-shirts.
Hopefully more people buy it.
I know. That's so cool. So, yeah, we've got our
Yeah.
website up and running as well. So, everything's on our website, spookymountainpodcast.com. Check it all out, all of our socials and everything you need
Yeah.
is on there.
Do it. Do it
Yeah.
now.
Do it now.
All right. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye. This episode of Spooky Mountain was created and recorded on land of the original custodians, the Gundungurra and Bidjigal people. We pay respects to the past, present, and emerging mob. My name is Geordie, and I'm a proud Gunya woman. Thank you for listening.